Saddle up, amigos, for Sunset Riders in the arcade.
This is Pixelated Audio, episode 54. All right, this is Pixelated Audio, a bi-weekly video game music podcast, and we've got some excellent music in this episode today.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it might partially be my nostalgia talking, but I think it's a lot of fun to listen to.
Nah, I think this game definitely merits a full episode.
Yeah. We are your hosts. I'm Brian, and this is James, and today we're going to be playing music from a very well-loved arcade game, Sunset Riders.
The beautiful track that brought us in was titled The Magnificent Four, essentially the attract mode or the opening theme, composed by Motoaki Furukawa.
What a beautiful track it is.
Oh, yeah. I love that, Spanish guitar.
Right.
I mean, you can actually, it sounds like you can hear the vibration of the strings.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, I love that Spanish feel, and it has a little bit of a different Wild West feel to it than like our Wild Arms episode, which I like, that it has a little bit of variation.
Yeah, I remember hearing this, it really stands out because in the arcade you have all these really loud kind of obnoxious noises in the background and just everything, but this really stands on its own. It's this really beautiful guitar playing, and it's not too ambitious. I think it seems really homely and relaxed, and it has a really cool cutscene too that kind of gets you in the mood of that, that Clint Eastwood kind of feel. Yeah,
well, I mean, I can definitely see walking through the arcades, and there's a lot of synthy or really techno-y type sounds, and then you hear the Spanish guitar out of one ear, and you're like, what is that?
What's going on?
You don't even think of a lot of games that have that Wild West feel to it.
Yeah, so Sunset Riders is something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and it's something that's really important to me. Growing up, I played the hell out of this game. I remember, so I lived kind of near a pizza parlor, and the pizza wasn't that great, but what was really cool about it is that it took a long time to make, and so this arcade being there was my excitement, my enjoyment, because it would take 20-30 minutes for this mediocre pizza to be done, and me and my brother would just shove in quarters, just quarter after quarter, and until it was ready. And we have a lot of memories. I'm guarantee my brother's listening to this episode, and he's gonna be like, oh man, dude, Sunset Riders. No, video games and pizza parlors were perfect because you walk in, and at minimum it's going to take 30 minutes probably to make something, so you got to have something to do. Yeah, if it wasn't a 7-Eleven, it was a pizza parlor that I play a lot of my arcades in. Anyways, this soundtrack in general, the game has a lot of nostalgia to me. Me and you just played through it the other day. Had a lot of fun doing that, and we're gonna put a video online of our playthrough just for the hell of it.
Yeah, it's not like it's a great playthrough, but we thought it'd be fun just to kind of show that we played through it, I guess.
Yeah, so we figured this is gonna be a light episode. It's gonna be kind of short. There's not a lot of music in it, but everything you're gonna hear, you're gonna like a lot, and I absolutely love the soundtrack. So let's kind of get into it a little bit.
All right, so I almost feel like we don't need to explain it, but
you're probably right. Yeah, I think a lot of people know this.
It was a big game, but for those of you that haven't played it, Sunset Riders is a sprite-based 2D side-scrolling run-and-gun shooter set in an exaggerated Wild West. It was released in the arcades in 1991 and published and developed by Konami.
And probably something else that we don't need to explain a whole lot is Konami.
If you've played games and never heard of Konami, then you definitely haven't been playing the right games. You missed out. So Konami, it's not the first time we've featured them as a soundtrack on our show, and it's definitely not going to be the last. But even though the company that we know is no longer around, their legacy definitely lives on.
Yeah, they started in 1968 as a jukebox repair business, and they totally blew up after that. They got so, popular and, doing all sorts of calls. They got into pachinko and stuff like that. And they really made their way into the arcade era around the kind of the golden age, if you will, in the, mid to late 80s. And they were producing games for nearly every system at that point then. Stuff was coming in by the truckloads.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
And we couldn't get enough of it. Everything that Konami released, we would, buy it up. I, as a kid, see the name Konami, I know it's going to be a solid title.
Yeah, I think this is like the fourth or fifth Konami title we've had on the show. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like gold was just flowing out of their veins.
Right.
You know, like they were just cashing in on everything. But just to give you an idea, in 1991, when Sunset Riders came out, they also released Predator 2 on the Amiga, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, The Simpsons, Roller Games, Vendetta, Daytona Twinbee, all for the arcade. On the NES and Famicom, they did YY World 2, Skier Die, Lagrange Point, Base Wars, Rampart, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, Tiny Toon Adventures, and then over on the Super NES, they did the Legend of the Mystical Ninja, which is one of my favorite games.
Yeah, that's a big one for you.
Yeah, and Super Castlevania 4, which is also a huge one.
Mm-hmm. And also for the PC Engine, they had Gradius and Salamander.
Which are huge games.
Right, and they had a bunch of Game Boy titles like Castlevania 2, nearly 10 different PC games, stuff on the X68000, Game Gear, ZX Spectrum, some of those Tiger handheld-like games. Like I remember having a Ninja Turtles basketball one.
Right. So definitely had Konami on the logo there. And they, you know, you have to remember, this is all in 1991.
1 year. And this isn't even every game they put out in that 1 year, but it's just the big ones.
Exactly. But this is already like 30 plus titles that we've just kind of mentioned. So they were just producing just so much. And this isn't even one of their heaviest years either.
Right. And most of those titles are titles that I guarantee that you guys have heard of, at least most of them.
Oh, yeah. Just like look at the list. You know, we just read off like half of those are just easily recognizable. And I think a lot of our listeners, a lot of you guys could easily identify and pick out most of those. Mm-hmm. You think about it and you look at kind of just this 1 year and you realize like, wow, Konami was a pretty busy little company.
Yeah, they were a beast. Anyway, let's get into our first track. This is a track that plays in stage 1, 5, and 8, and it's called Gunfight at the Sunset Corral.
That was Gunfight at the Sunset Corral, composed by Motoaki Furukawa for Sunset Riders in the arcade.
That's a very Konami sound, I think, that we talked about, I think, in our...
Oh, that orchestra hit?
Yeah, in our Falcine episode, how there's a lot of similar samples in a lot of Konami games, which now you can kind of tell in just in 1991, they pumped out a lot of games, so I'm sure they had a very clean set of sounds that they like to use. But
right. Already kind of established their sound fine.
Yeah, I love that, though, because then it makes me think of other games that I've played by Konami that I love, and then you get to add in, like, say, if you played a new game, you get to add that into that nostalgia whenever you hear that sound. So, say, if you go start playing Turtles, you're like, oh, man, that's a sound that reminds me of Sunset Riders and stuff like that. So
yeah, that orchestra hit, I want to, coin as the Konami hit.
Yeah.
Because it's, maybe they say that online or something already, I don't know, but it's very distinctive. It's very loud, too. They always pump that thing out. It's kind of sometimes there's a few tracks later on that I'm like, oh man, it's almost too loud here. But sometimes it's really cool, and it kind of gets you into that action because it hits and gets your jolts your body. And, this track comes in and it's really it's kind of like has that Lone Ranger kind of feel to it.
Yeah, that very gallopy sound, kind of that like heroic melody. You feel like you're riding in for that gunfight.
Yeah, but very Wild West at the same time. It's a very, very cool track, and you hear this one a lot because it's the first level that you play. And so if you're playing with friends and you pop in a few quarters, you're going to hear this immediately, even before really you hear the track mode music sometimes, because you may have missed that.
Yeah,
and then,
or somebody's already playing it and you're standing there waiting.
Exactly. So this is a very important track to me, I think, for that reason. And there's a lot of action. You haven't experienced certain parts of this game. They don't really do it anywhere else. Like even though this kind of has cloned elements from other games that we'll talk about in a little bit, but I think that the action was really unique and the sound kind of carried with that feel. Yeah,
they definitely have very similar ingredients with the samples, but they definitely make completely different, I guess, dishes out of the other songs. So they feel this one definitely has a very Wild West feel to it, and that kind of heroic, like you said, Lone Ranger galloping heroic sound. That fits with those, those very bright, environments of saloons and stuff like that. And I definitely love this track for the sense that it really is a great sound to put you in the mood for the first level. Because, like you said, you may not have ever played it before, so you kind of got a chance to get used to the controls. And when I was listening to it, it definitely brought you back into playing it. Like we were just playing it the other day, and it brought a smile on my face just thinking about sitting there playing it.
You can remember exactly what you were doing.
Yeah.
And we owe a lot of the sound and that atmospheric feeling from the YM2151, also known as the OPM. We've talked about this before. It's a four operator 8-channel FM chip used in a bunch of different systems. There was the Atari System 1, the Sega System 16, Namco System 1 and 2, Sharp X1 Turbo, and the X68000. There's a few other that we haven't mentioned, but we talked about it in our X-Men episode, right?
Yeah, that was like episode 26, which is another great Konami arcade title.
Right. Go back and listen to that one. It's really fun. I think we kind of dove into the chip a little bit more there. Yeah, so I do want to kind of solo out a few little channels about the song Things That I Noticed.
All right, here it comes.
Yeah. So let me play. No, I think it'll sound kind of cool because I was kind of listening to it on my own. And I was like, there's a lot going on under the hood here that I think would be a lot of fun to listen to. So this is actually channel 5. So like I said, there's 8 FM channels on the YM2151. This is channel 5. So let's listen to that real quick. Give you an idea. So we'll fade out these other ones here. Isn't that kind of cool?
Yeah.
You don't hear that really.
Yeah. It almost still has like that Wild West feel, but it's also like maybe a Caribbean Wild West.
Yeah. So what I think is really cool though is channel 6. Then so let's turn this one off and let's turn on channel 6. Listen to this.
Wow. There's little pitch bends in there too.
Yeah. Little guy's doing some work, man. Yeah, and what gives it such a live kind of trumpet or mariachi style feel is that nearly all of the high-pitched synths are slightly offset from each other. So like you get this really interesting, almost like I said, like live mariachi feel because everything is kind of just barely offset. So each different FM channel is kind of slightly askew.
It's not like so clean that it's robotical, so it gives you that feeling of like a live performance. Right, it's great.
The FM already has these timbres kind of just in its own tone, but having those kind of offset from each other really enhances that really lively kind of you're in some Wild West town. They're really showing strong, I think, in this. Yeah,
I mean, you definitely, once breaking it down, you can see all the work, and it's just really cool that all this little details that really add to that feeling of this game.
Yeah, little subtleties and stuff like that. Now, the YM2151 stands alone in a lot of arcade games, but a lot of the time it's combined with another chip for handling PCM samples, and such is the case here. So in 1991, Konami produced several arcades like Vendetta, Turtles in Time, and The Simpsons, which we had mentioned earlier. And those included the Konami 053260 chip. I'm not going to expect you to remember that. Yeah. But it's specifically to accompany the 2151 for sample data. So this is kind of neat because the 053260, I'm going to forget that too, is a 4-voice PCM ADPCM sound chip that also incorporates 4 8-bit ports for communication between the main CPU and the audio CPU. And samples can either be 8-bit signed PCM or 4-bit unsigned ADPCM, which we've talked about is just basically like a custom compression for PCM data.
Right.
And it's because of its data bus that it can address up to 2 megabytes of data at one time. So it's kind of neat because it can pull all these very large samples and be able to access them and play those back. And that's why you get these really rich sounds in this game, because there's quite a number of voices added in. So you got the 8 from the 2151, and then you have 4 from this PCM chip. And Furukawa was smart because all the heavy distorted guitar sounds and all the percussion were left for the PCM, and all the horns and all the brass section and stuff like that was done on the FM synth on the YM2151. So it really has like this more like kind of natural, organic feel to the brass section, I think, leaving it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite things about talking about the chips and some of the limitations, and especially in like the arcade, how they were able to get around some of those limitations, or they had the space to add in unique things you didn't see in consoles, or they could kind of mix it up between cabinet to cabinet. And it's really neat to see how each game, even though they come from the same company, can have different variations that can really composed, speak to that game.
Yeah, it can be composed completely different. And so, another maybe less versatile composer may have put, percussion on the, PCM channels, and also try to put horns in there, or put, try to make distorted guitar on the FM channels. And we know how that turns out. So,
oh yeah, I totally agree. If Motoaki Furukawa hadn't done this soundtrack, it could have been completely different just with the organization alone.
Well, who knows? I mean, it could have, somebody else, very talented guy in Konami, could have produced something good, but I'm really glad that this composer did this soundtrack.
Right. So a little bit more about Furukawa is he also went by the alias Michelle Furukawa, and he's a Japanese composer from Kobe, Japan. And what's interesting is when he was really young, he started playing guitar and got so good that he started winning a bunch of awards as a soloist, and eventually joined some bands and things like that.
Yeah,
and
he was winning awards in different bands too. So I was a very talented little guy.
Yeah, extremely talented. And so in 1986, he joined Konami and gained a huge reputation for his soundtracks for Snatcher and Gradius 2. We're going to talk a little bit more about him in a little bit. We just kind of wanted to get into it a little bit before we moved on to some more music. So
what do we got next?
So we're going to play another track, and it's called It's Time to Pay, and this is the first boss fight.
That was the boss from stage 1, and the track was titled "It's Time to Pay." I love this track so much.
Yeah,
man. It's not like it's an amazing track, and we get those Konami hits right in the beginning there that kind of like, no, it's cool because the nostalgia of this is
this boss is definitely one that's hard to forget.
Because it's the first one you come across. It's not the first level's not that hard, and you should be able to get through it in 1/4. And so you get to this boss, and the first thing he says is like, "It's time to pay."
Yeah.
And then you never forget that. And then when you beat him, he says, "Bury me with my money."
Which is, for all the places that I've seen Sunset Rider stuff, there's always people that are, typing that out and posting it. And it's just so funny. I think it's not anything that's like ridiculously hilarious. But it's like the voice sample and the fact that
it's so fun to do
right after the battle. And it's fun to say.
Well, the thing is, it's funny because like I hadn't played this game in years, and still like to this day, if somebody mentions something about like money in a weird voice or something, the first thing in my head is like the bury me with my money. I just think that in my head naturally, and this game like will be forever, just ingrained for that.
Yeah.
So this is a cool boss fight.
Yeah. No.
It's all right.
Yeah, it was definitely neat to see because this game is pretty interesting for the gameplay, which we'll get into later. So it really adds to the boss fights a lot, and I think this track was very up tempo, had a lot of urgency to it. I love like the synthy keys or whatever the sample is. It's just like going all over the place, and they're very high energy. I was telling you that I don't remember this track during playing the game.
Right.
I remember the first level track while playing, but I think for bosses, you get really sucked in. There's bullets flying everywhere, and I didn't quite remember hearing this, but it is fun, and it definitely stands out as like a boss type track.
Right. So the story is you play as one of 4 bounty hunters that are hunting down bounties, for obviously wanted outlaws. And like Konami X-Men Arcade, which we covered in episode 26, Sunset Riders arcade cabinet was released in both the 2-player and the 4-player layout. And in the 2-player version, each player gets to choose one of the different 4 bounty hunters.
Right.
And in the 4-player, they're all assigned to a specific location on the control panel.
Yeah.
So you got your, each one of your guys kind of lined up. So if you wanted to play in one particular area on the arcade, you're going to be the same guy every single time.
Right. So so if there's only like 3 of you guys playing and somebody wants to be the guy all the way to the end, there might be a gap and you stand off by yourself.
And that's how the X-Men Arcade was. That's how Simpsons Arcade was.
Yeah.
I think Turtles was like that too.
Yeah, for the 4-player,
Yeah, so I mean, it was a fun way to get everybody to kind of break it up and try something new rather than one person playing as Leonardo the whole time.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of nice too because when you sit down and you have 4 players, you don't have to be the quickest to get to whoever you want to play. Whoever you want to play as, you just kind of, you're standing in this position, already kind of got there, so which is nice. And all the players play very well in the game. So you have 4, like you said, 4 different players. They're all kind of color coded, and you have Steve, who uses revolvers, Billy, who also uses revolvers, Bob, who uses a rifle, and Carmano, who uses a shotgun.
And they're all really like kind of. It reminds me of Back to the Future, like when Marty goes, back to the Wild West, and he's wearing that like bright pink outfit.
Yeah,
they're all really exaggerated and silly looking, but
they have like huge tassels, and
you can't help but love it though.
I mean, it's definitely very exciting.
Cormano has the big sombrero.
Yeah, he was the one
Poncho.
who I played through in our playthrough, and I just liked his shotgun was really cool.
Yeah, but the opening intro for this game is rad because you get to see all the characters, and like kind of their faces just drawn in like big beautiful animated cutscene. And seeing them all there looking so cool. I think Bob has like a cigarette, or maybe it's Billy has a cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah, one of them, and it was neat because you got to see them up close, and it was also in a really cool like gunfight. So it kind of helped make you think about when you're playing that this is what it's like.
Yeah, it adds more to that 2-dimensional game than it sounds. It's more like a 3D feel. You kind of recognize the characters' faces, even though it's hard to discern the pixels. When they're smashed on the screen. Can really get a sense of like a live kind of feeling from these characters. Yeah,
just that few little seconds in the cutscene kind of embeds that real feel to it.
Yeah. For the controls, you have an 8-way joystick to aim and move your character, and then 2 buttons, and one is for shooting and one is for jumping. I miss this about arcades.
Yeah.
I like the simplicity, but the complexity you can do with just like these 2 separate buttons and an 8-way joystick.
Yeah, that pick up and play, and you get the hang of it and you really like it.
Yep. We see it in the indie space a little bit here. But could always use more. Anyways, you can also jump to high locations. And the way to think about this is if you've ever played Rolling Thunder, it's kind of like a 2-tier system, right? In each level, you get like a high area that you can kind of jump up to, like on the rooftops or second floor.
Yeah, like balconies and
right, and chandeliers and stuff like that. And then you have your base floor. gives it a little bit more variety. So like like when me and you were playing, I stuck to the top area and you stuck to the bottom area, or we kind of mix it up, and it'd be a little bit fun to kind of experience the game, not like side by side, you know.
Right, and the nice thing too is it allows you to shoot people on the balcony, shoot diagonally. If you go up on the balcony, you can shoot people on the ground. So no matter where you went, you felt like you still had full control of what you were doing.
Right, and if you hold down and diagonally on the joystick, you can also do like a slide to avoid bullets with the jump button. Kind of gets your character to slide, except I didn't use that.
Yeah, neither did I.
I think me and you just took the bullet to the face like a man.
Yeah, I think we had those unlimited quarters, so it was like, let's just blast through it, kind of barrel through it.
Added to it.
So as far as stages go, there's a total of 8, and at the beginning of each level, you're shown a wanted poster for your next target. So the basic objective of the game is to survive each level, like most games, through the onslaught of bandits and outlaws. And at the end of each level, you fight the boss of the wanted poster, and then you collect your bounty. And they do the bounty in a really interesting way. So a lot of games you'll take, and whoever gets the last kill gets all the points. But in this game, it's whoever did the most damage. And it's pretty cool. So when you beat the boss, you get to see who's did what percentage, and then they get kind of the lion's share of the bounty.
See, I really like that, because when me and you were playing, it was kind of like, between each stage, it'd be like maybe I would get 37% damage to the boss, and you get the remaining. Then the next level, I would be like totally, kicking ass, and I would have like 80%, and you'd be like 20. And it was just always back and forth, be like, oh, who could do the most here?
Yeah.
I like that.
Because in the bosses, you have secondary characters and stuff like that, so sometimes you get bogged down focusing on them, and you're not dealing as much damage. But I thought it was just really cool that the game took the time to program that in there, so it was figuring out how much damage you were doing, and then obviously your bounty it equals the total, your grand total for your high score. So I think that was also a really cool way to incorporate all that money was also your high score. So.
Right. There's also some power-ups and bonus items that you can get in the game by entering saloons, which I always thought was so cool.
Yeah.
Like right in the beginning, you can like run into this open door, and the doors kind of swing. It's like that old style saloon. And depending on your character, he'll have a different action when he comes out of it. Like I think maybe it's Billy or something that comes out and he's drinking like I don't know,
whiskey
some kind of whiskey or something. And he has like a girl like on his shoulder, and he like throws the bottle.
Yeah, and I was playing as Kamano, and he comes out and he drinks it, and then he smashes it over his head and puts his sombrero back on, which was so like, whoa, cool. That's so awesome.
That's so awesome. Yeah, so you can get these power-ups by entering saloons. That's one of them. Or by enemies that are like carrying around a bag. It's kind of like Contra, like the flashing red enemies. Those are the ones that have the power-up item.
Yeah, they're not doing anything to you other than trying to get away with some sack. But in those sacks and in the saloons, you can find golden sheriff badges, which give you auto fire. And then there's also silver badges, which give you a second gun, letting you shoot in 2 directions at once, which is pretty cool.
Right.
And you can actually have both power-ups at the same time. So you can have auto fire and 2 guns. But the thing is, if you die in, there's a ton of different ways to die in this game, not just by being shot. You can get trampled or blown up. And so if you die, you lose all your power-ups. So then you kind of got to start again and kind of rebuild those, which is pretty neat.
I did like the power-ups in this game because it gives your arm a break from the constant like button mashing. That was the same thing with Contra. Like you had to, when you got like machine gun, you could just hold down, B button and just go to town. It was like more of like a break for you than anything else.
Yeah, and having 2 guns is just cool. Seeing the 2 revolvers, or with Carmano, those double shotguns, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anyways, let's get into some more music. We're going to play 2 tracks here. This is from Stage 2. It's called Butch, Cassidy and the Sunset Riders. And then we're going to play a track from the Stage 2 boss titled Draw, Pilgrim.
You just heard Butch Cassidy and the Sunset Riders.
You gotta put a little more twang in your voice, man.
All right. You just heard Butch Cassidy and the Sunset Riders, stage 2 and 7.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. Motoaki Furukawa, man, what a awesome guy.
Yeah.
And then the track after that was Draw Pilgrim. And see, I'm doing it in my normal voice now.
Yeah. Well, you went out with the more twangy one.
That's right. That stage 2 music, man, like it's cool because this is the first time that you really get to experience the game a little bit differently, right?
Yeah. Stage 2 is a little bit different than stage 1, where you're going to be on horses now. So.
Yeah, you're on horseback.
Yeah.
So I think the mood of the track kind of fits because it's a much shorter track, right? It's only like 30 seconds long. We add a little bit extra loop in there for you guys to fully listen to it. It's a lot more fast paced, right? Because you're on horseback and you're galloping along, and there's a lot of action, and it's more of just like this constant kind of like locomotion, I guess. You know?
Yeah. I mean, and I thought it was kind of neat how it starts out. There's almost like this build to something that might be kind of scary, and then it gets really kind of silly and kind of funky to it, and it just makes me smile because then you see them riding these horses, and the horses look cool, and they're like pink and blue and stuff like that. So it kind of matches you, I guess, and it's fun, but then like it fits with the stage really well. Like it's a really fun stage.
You get those really I think this is one of those examples where those Konami hits are a little bit too loud.
Yeah.
Like right in the beginning, it's like dun 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 dun. You know? But the overall feel of the track makes it feel like I imagine like this like a hobo in a train in like a boxcar, playing a banjo, just doing his thing, and that's the kind of leads to that Wild West kind of feel, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that blew me away too was that you can't really get into a Wild West game without thinking about horses and trains. So to throw that into the second level, I thought was really cool.
Oh, it was perfect,
and it made it fun. Like the soundtrack for that level was very fun, and it made me excited and kind of made me feel like a kid when I would imagine playing like cowboys or whatever, and I don't have a horse to play on, but then you get to ride this horse next to a train and
stand on
people,
like ride like a broom around the living room. Or something. Now the second track, the boss track, this was I thought this was a really strong track. Actually, I really like this. I thought this was like definitely a little more memorable for me as far as just what it's doing. I think there's a few different interesting kind of parts to this. It's not the bass. I think we can turn off the Konami PCM chip. So here's the track in its entirety. And so let me disable the Konami PCM chip.
Okay.
And then here's the track. So I think it's channel. Let's see the bass. Okay, that's the bass. Let's see, channel 2, 3, 5, and 6. Okay, and so you're left with this,
which is still really cool.
Yeah. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where you have. Do you hear that delay?
Yeah. You can definitely hear that where it's not really creating like an echo, but you can definitely hear that they're not all hitting at the same time.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to that live, like a trumpet quartet all playing at the same time. One might be a little bit, slower or be taking a breath or, and it has that really natural feel.
Yeah, and it also makes it feel very full too. I think covering some of those gaps with the delay makes it feel like it also adds to that feeling that there's more than one person playing that instrument.
Yeah. Listen to like all the subtleties in the different channels. I think is always fun to do, but with this, I think it's another example of what makes this soundtrack so richly composed.
Yeah.
I think having that live aspect.
When I thought this was cool too with this boss fight, and the song was very kind of up tempo and a little bit more serious than the actual track leading up to the boss.
Oh, big time!
Which I thought was neat because the first boss fight kind of set me up to think that they're all going to be like
silly
ridiculous, and this guy was a little bit more serious, but not like the bad kind of serious. I thought he was a very cool villain.
Yeah, I think that all the characters, some of them are ridiculous, some of them are a little more, a little more majime, a little more serious.
Yeah,
it's Japanese coming out, and I think that the feel of the game is kind of comical.
Yeah,
in general, but you get those kind of like cool, serious parts.
Yeah, so in addition to the on-foot and the horse riding levels that we've already mentioned, there are a couple times where you get to do a bonus mini-game, which take place at the end of level 2 and 5, which puts you in a first-person perspective shooting with bandits that appear in the 8 different directions, so it takes advantage of the 8-way joystick.
Right, it's kind of like whack-a-mole.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Think of it like that.
It was pretty fun.
Yeah, it's cool. So me and you were playing. So this is kind of giving an example. Me and you were playing. I have like a red crosshair, and you have a blue crosshair. These bandits will pop up all over the screen, kind of like your whack-a-mole, and you have to move the controller in the direction, the arcade stick, in the direction that the enemy is.
Yeah.
And you fire, and at the end, you get a grand total of your score versus the other player.
Yeah, which is really neat. And it happens, it starts out slow, so it's kind of like, okay, cool, I got this guy. And then towards the end, it gets going so fast that like you and I are able to shoot different people at the same time because there's so many on the screen at once.
Yeah, you always beat me every time.
Yeah.
I think there was one that like I had like nudged you or something and threw you off a little bit. But
yeah, well, I kind of do like that 1,000-yard stare, so I'm not really looking at anything in particular, and then they pop up in my field of vision, and I know where like what direction to hit, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I just aimed at one area and I just waited for that one.
Yeah.
No, it's cool though, and it's not even necessary to the game at all. It serves no purpose, I think, other than points.
Yeah.
Right. So,
but it's a nice break from the side-scrolling shooting, and it kind of, for me, mentally it allows you to change pace a little bit, but then also it is a fun little idea that I don't think could really sustain itself over a full game. So I thought it was a nice addition, and to me, it really reminded me of that part in the Christmas Story where Ralphie's shooting like was it One-Eyed Bart or Black Bart or whatever.
Oh, The Simpsons.
Yeah.
The Christmas Story.
Yeah, the Christmas Story.
Okay,
yeah, like with his Red Ryder BB gun, and like he like saves the family, because it just reminded me of like that's what it would look like when realistically. They just keep popping up and he's just shooting.
Right, when he goes in that dream phase when he's like daydreaming about it. That's right. I was like, Simpsons reference. Wait a minute, no.
Yeah.
Now I can't stop thinking about that. Yeah, but it serves a purpose. I think, like you said, it's that break kind of feeling, right? And we see this in like Street Fighter 2 even, where you do
kicking
the damage, kicking the car and the oil drums, stuff like that. Kind of that same kind of thing. But let's get into our next tracks. We have music from Stage 3, and the track is titled Face with Courage. And then right after that, we're going to play the Stage 3 boss, which is called You and He, Big Trouble.
You just heard Face with Courage from Stage 3, and You and He, Big Trouble, Stage 3 Boss, composed by Motoaki Furukawa for Sunset Riders on the arcade.
I like the Stage 3 music a lot, dude.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Very cool.
But has that kind of march, like conquistador march to it.
Yeah, I could feel like they're riding in, like say like you're in town and you see someone in the distance coming in. I even thought that this could have worked well as like a title screen music, or like even like in a track mode, because it had that very cowboy feel to it, and it drew your attention, but it kind of looped a lot.
Yeah, it's short. It's like under a minute, I think, before it hits the loop point, but it's a fun track to listen to. Now, the Stage 3 boss, I think this is a really cool track, but I gotta say, man, that Konami hit is way overused.
Yeah, it's a lot. And that Konami hit is what really makes me think of Turtles, but I feel like they used it a little bit more.
Too much.
Yeah, well, I think in Turtles they used it a little bit like better, like not over the top, whereas this one, it does give me this feeling like it's a little bit much.
Right. Let's listen to it without that and just see how it sounds, because I think we'll be able to hear more to it, right? So here's the track with everything. Okay, let me see. So I think that's a PCM hit on the Konami chip. Let me flip through them here. Okay, yeah. So it's channel 1. So let's start over from the beginning here. Oh my God, so much better.
Yeah. And it still does exactly what you were trying to do before with the track. It's just a little less offensive to your ear with headphones on.
Man, that percussion line is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, you can hear those individual crashes a lot better. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, this is a really cool track, though. I liked it. Like, overall, I think, just like we were saying, that orchestra hit is just a little bit overbearing.
Yeah, it's a little obnoxious in this game, but still great sound, very Konami, very cool. It definitely fits with this Western theme, and I really like the pairing of these two together. I thought that track from Stage 3 was really good, and then the boss track was another really good one with lots of percussion.
Right after the next, they do fit together very well. Awesome. So a little bit more about Motoaki Furukawa. He's done a ton of different games. So 4 years after joining Konami in 1990, he formed the Konami Kukeha Club, serving as the leader of the group.
Yeah,
which is pretty awesome. We've talked about the Kukeha Club a million times over.
Yeah,
and he was kind of like the main head honcho.
Yeah, I mean, so that says a lot about him, because that was a huge group over the years, had huge members, and very big composers were part of it.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the composer, some of the stuff he did in the arcade was Gradius 2, Zexys, Ashita no Joe, Boxing Mania. He did a lot of the Guitar Freaks and Drum Mania series games, and he also did Ajax for both the arcade and the X68000.
And some of his NES titles, we have Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, and Super C. For the MSX, we have Gradius 2, Gopher's Ambition, Episode 2, which we know as Nemesis 3, Salamander, F1 Spirit. He did some work on Metal Gear and SD Snatcher.
Yeah, and then on the PC 98, he did Police Knots, which is a fantastic soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly.
And then for the PC Engine Super CD-ROM, he did Castlevania Rondo of Blood. I mean, holy crap, right?
Yeah, can't get a whole lot bigger than that.
Yeah, what a badass, dude. Yeah. And then he did Snatcher as well, which is an amazing soundtrack. On the N64, he did Castlevania 64 and Jikyo Powerful Pro Yaku 6, which is a baseball game.
Cool.
But a very popular baseball game in Japan. And the soundtrack is probably pretty awesome. I have to go back and listen to it, though.
Yeah.
Anyways, he left Konami in 2003 to become a freelancer, where he worked on Thunder Force 6 for the PS2 alongside Tamayo Kawamoto, Go Sato, and Tsuyoshi Kaneko. And he's still doing freelancing today, but he's also part of a fusion band or music group called Voyager. And they put out albums and stuff, and they do live shows every now and then, which is pretty cool. They're still doing stuff today.
That's totally awesome.
Yeah, and he also runs an online store for music called M's Art. And from what I take, I guess you can purchase these albums that he does, and you can use them in your own projects. I may have kind of skimmed through it a little bit, so I'm not sure how the licensing works with it, but it's supposedly free use music. So
that's very cool.
Yeah, so he's really passionate about what he does, and he's a very talented guy. I mean, his guitar solos and he's just rocking out, and he understands not only just the guitar side of it, he really understands all the other instruments in a orchestra, or for this kind of game, all the the banjos and the percussion and the trumpets. He understands all the sections. I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely spent decades honing his craft, and has continued into he's still making music and still performing, which is awesome. It's always good to hear that these retro composers from the 80s and 90s are still making music today.
Still doing it. I want to go see his show live, man.
Yeah, that would be very cool. I bet you
it's off the hook. Yeah, I contacted him. I was like, hey, you want to be on the show? And I haven't heard back yet. So.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, a lot of Japanese composers we want to get on the show, but they're kind of we'll have some on, definitely.
I'm sure we will at some point.
Well, we've been talking with a few different ones, but it's just kind of time and place, and some are a little bit more reserved than others. So it depends on how they warm up. But anyways, we have some more music to play. Let's get into stage 6. This is called the Rosy Setting Sun.
You just heard the Rosy Setting Sun, composed by Motoaki Furukawa for Sunset Riders on the arcade.
It's a really awesome track, too. It's got that kind of thing going on.
Yeah, that's got that very Wild West kind of sound in the beginning.
Well, it's cool because they're going back to that kind of really, really Wild West feel, and this is later on in the game. This is stage 6, right? So, Wild West trope.
Yeah, kind of
music.
Like American, like Clint Eastwood movies type feel to it, except for like a cartoony, silly, version at times.
Right. No, this is fun though. It does have has like a lot of build up. I know there's a lot of like percussion and like xylophone stuff like that. That's really just like punchy and progressive the whole track. It's short. It's only like 50 seconds or something, but
it definitely has that feeling of like you've upped the ante towards the end of the game. Like it's getting more dangerous kind of feel to it when they bring that Spanish style sound back, and then there's like a lot of little instruments. Like I heard like this kind of like washboardy type sound, and then there was like these finger shell.
What do you call those?
I don't know. I forgot. I know there's like finger cymbals and stuff, but that's like more of like a like the percussion,
like the ole.
It's more like
you can't see my hands right now, but I'm doing like the But you were saying something earlier about, was it the xylophone?
Yeah, it was kind of like that's that like rattly washboard type sound. Okay. It's like very rapid and.
Well, do you want to hear it real quick?
Yeah,
Let's see if we can find that. I think I was trying to make a note. I think it was like what were the channels?
I think so.
Here's the track in its entirety. But
it was 3, 6, 7, and 8.
3, 6, 7, and 8. Oh man. All right. So this is with only channel 3, 6, 7, and 8. That's kind of cool. Wow, wow.
Yeah. It reminds me of like a Koopa choir or something. There it goes.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was a very cool sound. Yeah. When I first heard it, it seemed very faint. And then after we were playing with the channels and then we listened to it again with all the channels, I was like, how can I not hear that now?
Right. And this is all in the YM2151 too, so it's all FM synthesis. Anyways, so we haven't really gotten into the graphics much yet, but we've been talking about the gameplay and stuff. We can probably keep it brief, but the game is very bright and colorful. Mm-hmm. It really has that attract mode feel to it. I was attracted to it as a kid.
Yeah.
Everything on the screen, the characters are over exaggerated. They're bright pinks, bright blues.
Yeah, neon green pants and stuff like that.
But you can't help but love it, right?
Yeah, and it does a really good job because it allows them to set the backgrounds as more of like muted colors, like browns, and the saloons can be gray, and different like more muted toned back colors, and let your character pop out. And then the bad guys are kind of the same way. They're very bright, like purples and teals and stuff like that. And some of it's like incredibly exaggerated. Horses, I think I mentioned before, sometimes like pink and green, and cattle. There's like the stampede part.
Oh yeah,
there's a whole bunch of different colors, cows.
It stands out in my mind so well. So in level 1, you're walking, you see the little chickens starting to move around and get all freaked out, and the ground is kind of starting to rumble, kind of Jurassic Park style. Yeah. And all of a sudden, a stampede of bulls comes charging at you.
Yeah.
And your character jumps up on top of them.
Hopefully he jumps on it, or you get trampled.
Yeah. And you're running, and your character's running movement looks so like, it's like so anime, got to get away from,
it's super exaggerated.
Yeah, their faces are all like bug-eyed, and it's really fun. And these kind of goofy, quirky animations and very bright, colorful graphics, I think, make the game enjoyable for everybody. Like, I think anybody could sit down and play this game and have a great time with it.
Yeah, and one of the things that was really cool too that helped make things stand out from the background is there was some destructible parts. Like they would have like barrels or stuff kind of like hanging from ropes, and you could shoot those and those would fall on people, or there'd be other things you could like shoot or fall on you. And so there was a lot of it made it very easy to tell what were some of the things you could interact with and what were the things you didn't interact with. And they had some stuff way in the foreground that helped make things feel like you're moving, especially in like the horse riding sections. Like they had like cactus.
Oh, the cactuses,
or cacti. Which really made it like feel like you're moving really rapidly. And
and there's even like explosions. So girl runs out and she throws a stick of dynamite at you, and your character gets burnt. It shows your character kind of as like this crispy, animation where his eyes are the only thing showing. He's all like totally burned and singed, and he kind of like
falls over
in dust or whatever.
Yeah, they had some really great animations in this game.
If you haven't played the game, seriously, play it. You will very much love yourself for it. We have a lot more music to play. Well, actually, there's not a whole lot left. We do have a little boss rush, though.
Yeah, so we got 3 boss tracks coming at you. We're Gonna Blow You Away, Adios, Amigo, and Me Ready for Pow-wow.
And this is from the bosses of stage 4, 5, and 6. So hopefully you made it through all those bosses in one life. That was We're Gonna Blow You Away from the stage 4 boss, Adios Amigo from stage 5 boss, and Me Ready for Pow-wow, stage 6 boss. The first one's cool. I mean, it's I don't know.
It feels like a typical boss fight. There's nothing like really exceptional about the track, but it has that boss fight feel. It's kind of dark. It starts to get a little bit more menacing, I feel.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. It was okay.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. The next track though, it was cool. It was kind of like a jazzy Matador kind of feel. It had a lot of jazz. No.
Yeah, no, I definitely had that kind of up-tempo dance type feel to it, a little bit of that kind of salsa type thing, I guess, maybe. Maybe it's just the beginning that kind of influenced my feeling for the rest of the track, but I thought it was pretty cool.
The next one, man, talk about insensitive to God. So it's supposed to be this kind of like Native American wigwam style track, I guess. And I mean, just the title itself, like Me Ready for Pow-wow, like come on now, like guys, like and you look at the this is going back to the graphics and stuff again, but all of the Native Americans, the Indians, the Injuns, I guess, whatever, are like bright red skin and
they're
green
like fuchsia, like very kind of like a pinkish red, like very bright.
Like, come on, but this is back in the day where it didn't matter so much. You could have games with a character smoking a cigarette. You can have, they didn't really care so much. I
mean, they were playing on American stereotypes seen in Japan, so it's kind of like once removed from these stereotypes. And I mean, the level was fun. The music for this level, for this boss fight, I thought was the most dark and menacing feeling.
Oh, I agree. This is actually my favorite one out of the three here. So.
But yeah, it definitely is. Now, nowadays you'd be like, ooh, like it's the only level that has not bandits. It's Native Americans that you're fighting, so they're shooting bows and arrows at you.
Cowboys versus Indians. Yeah. It's like, and when we were growing up, that was totally okay. That was totally, whatever. People didn't think twice about it, but now it's like, it's just too insensitive, I think people would be a little upset if something came out like this.
Yeah, and I mean, even his name is like Chief Scalp'em or something like that, so...
Anyways, we got some more boss music to play. Let's play Stage 7 boss and Stage 8 boss. Tracks are titled I, Chihuahua and The Great Petal.
You just heard I, Chihuahua, Boss 7, and The Great Petal, Boss 8.
The first track, it's cool. It's got that that bass, like that bum 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 bum. I like that. I thought it was cool. Nothing really over the top about this track. In fact, none of the boss music, other than the first maybe two, are really that memorable to me. And I think that's because this game, I didn't have a lot of time to play it. Like I said, at the pizza parlor and stuff, I usually didn't make it that far.
Right. So it's just more like you've just played those bosses more and more and more.
Right. So I don't have like a crazy nostalgia for it, but I do hear it. And that next track, man, it starts off so, I want to say it's really classy and almost like a sexiness to it. And then God, Konami just really overusing those,
like the whole rest of the song is orchestra hits. But for that first one, I thought it was neat. It gives you that the I, Chihuahua. It gives you your heart racing like what a boss fight should. The next one, the Great Petal, I thought was really neat. I like that start. The orchestra hits. I mean, he's the end boss. He's the big guy. So I guess if you're gonna lace a track with orchestra hits, he's the one. But I thought it was kind of funny for him because you mentioned like the sexiness to it, and I think that's what they were kind of going for that character, because he comes out with like a rose petal in his mouth, but with all the colors and like the flashiness, I just kept thinking like it was like a play on like a gay cowboy, he's like a dandy, I think is what they called it back in old western type stuff. Right. He was. I don't know if that was intentional or if that's just the way I read it based on the colors and the way he moves.
Right, and not to be insensitive, but this game is very insensitive. So like we're trying to just explain how I think they're trying to portray it.
Yeah.
This track, it does, and this end boss does remind me a lot of, I want to say like Vega from Street Fighter. He's very feminine, but at the same time he is very powerful and has like this kind of conceited thing going on, this narcissistic kind of
he's very kind of full of himself, and maybe even his own image, which I definitely got that from this game, which I thought was kind of nice, because you have this whole, up to this point, everyone's kind of like, you get this sense that they're very like dirty and like drunk half the time, and then you get this guy where you just get this impression that his suits are pressed and he's very clean and so which I thought was pretty nice, and it was kind of neat that he was a very different feeling boss.
Yeah, so we've been playing all these short boss tracks. There's one more short track that I want to kind of nudge in here real quick because I love it so much. It's only really 15 seconds long, but let's listen to it. It's called Continue of Sorrow, and this is where you die and you got game over, and it's like, do you want to continue? Do you want to feed in more quarters? Awesome track, though. Let's check it out. Pretty awesome, huh? That like funky bass and stuff like that. That was Continue of Sorrow, and that's the game over kind of continue music. It's not when you get game over, but it's like, hey, do you want to put in some more money?
Yeah.
I really like it.
No, I really like that track too. And I like your placement of it too, because we've kind of come to the end of the arcade.
Right.
The arcade section, so it's kind of like, do we want to continue? Well, yeah, we would like to continue to some of the ports that this game saw.
Right. So it was originally ported to two different systems after the 1991 release in the arcade. It first came out for the Sega Genesis, right, in 92.
Right.
Yeah, so it came out for the Genesis and the Mega Drive, and this version is quite different than the arcade. We both played it together to kind of get a feel for what we were missing, because I didn't grow up with this version,
right?
And I guess you didn't play it either until we were together. So it feels really watered down, though.
It does. I mean, one of the first things right off the bat that you notice that is a sense of it being watered down is there's only two characters to play as.
Right, Billy and Cormana only.
Yeah,
it just feels halfway there. It doesn't have the arcade experience that a lot of Sega Genesis games got when they were ported from the arcade. This feels like it just didn't quite make the cut.
Well, and another thing is that they cut half of the bosses. So there was only 4 bosses. You still had 8 stages, but each stage was kind of broken into 2 parts. So you had a stage where you got to the end, no boss, and then the next stage was with the boss at the end of the stage. So it kind of felt like, well, like there was a lot cut out of it right off the bat.
Right, even the boss voice, stuff from the arcade was taken out.
Yeah, so it was all text based.
It was all text, which you lose a lot. You lose the "bury me with my money" quote.
Yeah, so it just is written there in text. You don't get that awesome voice acting.
Right. So you want to play a track from the Genesis real quick?
Yeah.
I think we can do the level 1 or something like that.
Yeah, something that's kind of maybe people have heard, so you can kind of see how the Genesis did it.
Right, and I think hearing it through the YM2612 is quite different as far as how the FM is handled. So let's play track 1. We'll just play for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can hear that, it's got a very Genesis sound. It's not bad. I think the track's pretty cool.
Yeah,
but
I like the little twinkling in there and stuff. Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear how the Genesis would do its rendition of an arcade track. So it's not bad. I think it's probably better than maybe the game plays, or you might have a little bit more fun listening to the music than playing the game. Not that the game's bad, but I think that the music was pretty neat in the Genesis.
Right. And it was a year later, in 1993, the game was ported over to the Super Nintendo this time. And the soundtrack is actually not much different. I mean, obviously you're going through the Super Nintendo sound hardware, so it's going to have a slightly different feel to it because it's still sample based, right? But it does have it does kind of, I think, live up to some of the the coolness of the arcade version. The problem with this port, though, is it was so heavily censored.
Yeah, and I think that as an adult, I didn't really see anything too over the top outside of maybe the Native American stuff.
Right.
But they censored things like when you go into the saloon and come back out, the girls would be different, and there's a part
they'd be more dressed.
But I didn't feel like they were
overly
like that. They were were like really undressed either. And then there's a part when you take on the two boss brothers at the same time, and then there's like these dancers that come out, and
the can dancers.
Yeah, and I guess they were more heavily dressed, and I didn't think that they were really showing a lot of skin to begin with.
Right.
But I mean, it was very similar to the arcade version. It plays very similar. There's some hard things like bullets are very small in this version, so it's kind of hard to tell. But it has like the very awesome like running across the cow or the bulls and stuff like that. So it's a very good port. If you couldn't play the arcade version, I think this is definitely probably the next best version.
The way to go. Let's hear a track from the Super Nintendo, yeah?
Yeah.
How about Stage 2, since we just played Stage 1?
Sure.
All right, so here is Stage 2 from the Super NES. I take that back. That's actually quite different than the arcade version, the Super NES soundtrack. That was from Stage 2. But a lot of the other tracks are quite similar, I think.
Well, you can definitely tell which track it fits with. It's just it still had that fun kind of weird like funny feel to it, like for riding on the horses and stuff like that. But
they had to fake the FM synth, right? So
right.
You can do that. So I mean, obviously, but overall, I mean, it's still an enjoyable way to experience the game if you don't have access to the arcade version. We have one last track though from this game, the arcade version. We're going to move back over to, and the track is titled "The Big Win," and this is the ending track.
That was the ending track titled The Big Win, composed by Motoaki Furukawa for Sunset Riders on the arcade.
It's a really different track than everything else. It still has that Wild West feel, but it's like you're done.
Yeah.
You've already popped in like $20 of your parents' money, and hopefully this ending animation is good enough to justify it.
Yeah, there's definitely some quarter-eating levels in this game, but
especially those boss fights, man.
Yeah, I mean this track I thought was very nice. It was really beautiful, you know, like all the earmarks of a ending credits music, and I thought it was very satisfying and fulfilling to get to this point.
And it's cool too because you hear this as you see the four riding off into the sunset. It just kind of starts all back over.
As soon as it's over, it starts directly. You get to carry over your points and so on, which is kind of neat. So I guess if you wanted to keep going, you could really rack up that high score.
Yeah, keep that in the high scores, have your initials in there forever.
Yep.
But
I think credits music has a special place that it's hard to get to for a lot of games, and sometimes it's really satisfying when you get there, and sometimes it's a big letdown. I think this one is pretty satisfying.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Anyways, so today we covered Sunset Riders in the arcade, composed by Motoaki Furukawa.
If you want to know more about the show, you can check us out online at pixelatedaudio.com for show notes and track lists. We can also be found on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Pixelated Audio.
Also, be sure to visit our affiliate site, VGMrips.net, for accurate and high-quality game audio from dozens of different game consoles and arcade systems. it's a really fun project. All the guys there are super awesome. They are all very knowledgeable. I love just kind of chatting with them and being able to kind of look at different sound chips and look at different audio. And there's a ton of different packs to pick from. So you'll definitely find something that you haven't heard that you would really love.
Yeah, and it's great. You sign in, you create your own account, and you can store all the game or all the tracks that you like and go back and re-listen to them again.
Yeah. And you can also rate packs too.
Yeah.
So you can, add to the fun there. Also, we really appreciate feedback. Email us. We got a lot of emails, which is great. A lot of some of our listeners will write back and they'll have like 3 pages of email about a certain track they like. I love that. Reading through that is such a great thing to see from people engaging.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
I love when we get an email and it's like a paragraph, and then we respond because we love to respond to everything, and then we get an email back that's like 5 pages long.
Yeah,
it's like, they're like, oh my god, they responded, and then I'm like just gonna tell them everything, and we love reading it.
Oh yeah, we have a big grin on our face the whole time.
Yeah,
dude. It's awesome. Love hearing from you guys. Yeah, if you want to leave us a review on iTunes, that's excellent. We want to give a shout out to a few different people who left a review for us. There was Gabe Swar, who left us a really nice review a few weeks ago. So thank you very much for that. And also Adol45. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the feedback and the kind words.
Yeah. And we have one from our international store, which is pretty awesome to see. Thank you, Wildcat Beer from Canada, for your 5-star amazing review. It's really awesome to see.
I was cracking up. He says, yeah, I'm a huge fan of video game music. I downloaded a bunch of episodes and cleaned my car with a few beers and jammed all the way. My head never stopped bobbing. I loved that. I was cracking up. We were both me and you were just laughing our asses off. Yeah. That was good.
And if you want to check out some of our past episodes, we did recently a big episode with Chris Hulsbeck on Jim Power, and some of our Konami episodes we've done are Falcion and I Sent You Nicole on the Famicom Disk System, as well as the X-Men Arcade episode we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the Chris Hulsbeck episode was a blast.
Yeah.
What a cool guy, too.
Yeah, very nice guy.
And you can expect to see him on future episodes because he is a Bay Area local, and he is going to swing by the Pixelated Audio Studio for another episode in the future. I also want to do a little plug here for my side project. It's called the Impulse Project, and it is a podcast that kind of revolves around the demo scene music and the kind of subculture that is, the tracking community and stuff like that. There's a lot of really cool chip tunes. You can check it out on iTunes.
Yeah, and I would like to give my first shout out to my other side project, which is called the Avocado Nights, which is basically like a book club, but for video games. So it's not another podcast. I created it with a guy that you've heard from a few episodes from expansion packs by the name of Kevster. For me, I kind of burned through games and just play for a little bit. And this last year, I really focused on beating games. We pick a game, we play it, people can chime in, play along, talk about it, whatever, and then we move on to the next one.
I missed the first few games that you did. And it's neat because you can, I'm busy right now, so I don't have time to kind of play through these games with you. But in a future game, I can join and I can talk about it, and then I can drop out. It's kind of come as you are, I guess. We'll put a link on the website where you can find more information. Also, impulseproject.info for that podcast. And the track taking us out, and this is from OC Remix. It's a track called Mr. Pink Poncho's Western Rock Band, and it was remixed by Dr. Manhattan. And it's a really cool track. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in a few weeks for the next show.
Ride 'em, cowboy!
Bury me with my samples.